Good morning, Miss Purnima. How are you?
Hi, Sachin. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for asking. First of all, let me thank you for joining us at Net Talk. It really increases the value of Net Talk by people like you who are going to join and promote a youngster like me to launch a platform where all the people from marketing and HR community can come together and really teach something to the coming generation and how to build your career and how to go about it as well. Ma'am, we
Thank you.
have we have read a lot about you, that about your experiences. You have been vice president of marketing at various firms. Now you are a CMO at a very large firm as well. So one of the things that I was doing on LinkedIn was, when I started off as a marketer, was follow you. So whenever you used to write something, I used to follow diligently. Why has she written? What is the effect on it? And follow your career guidelines as well. So wherever you have left, actually we got a contract over there as a marketing agency. It'd be Microland or before that as well. So that's one of the things that we were doing. Ma'am, for our viewers, we just want to have a small introduction by yourself so that they can also learn how to introduce themselves.
Wow, that puts me on a spot, doesn't it? So, hi everyone, whoever's tuned in, thank you for tuning in. My name is Purnima Menon. I'm the CMO at Mar Labs, which is a digital solutions firm. My career has been very interesting, peppered over the last 25 years or so. So, you could call me a veteran of marketing. Started
Mhm.
when I was with the pre-digital era, started with advertising agencies, then moved laterally to PR agencies. Somewhere around early 2000, 2001, when the whole dot-com boom, dot-com bubble burst and, all of that was happening, Y2K was happening, was when I realized probably IT was one big space where I could put my arms and legs around and try and see, because there was a huge opportunity for marketing there. And that
Yes.
started my career, I would say, on the client or the corporate side, where I
Mhm.
joined an IT from agencies. I moved to IT firms, did
Mhm.
fairly large stints in Tata Telecom and Avaya and Infosys, and then moved on to do CMO stints. My last three stints have been actually CMO stints with, I would say,
Yes.
tier two or mid-sized IT organizations. So that's been pretty much the long and short of it.
That's right, ma'am. That's what we love, short and crisp, as well as more understanding that people can understand, because the attention span of the new millennials is decreasing as the day passes by. So this is really helpful. So, ma'am, as a CMO, as a woman, how difficult for was it for you to reach to this level? That is the first question that a lot of my female friends have asked to ask you about it.
So I'll be honest about it. I don't think my being a woman had anything to do with opportunities that came my way or didn't come my way. I think the first measure of
Mhm.
benchmark of success was, what did I really deliver to the table? And if I bought sound marketing intelligence, if I bought skills around marketing, then I think that was pretty much interesting and good enough for me to get into the conversations. Having said that, yes, I do find that women representation at C-suite is fairly low, and
Mhm.
India and the world. I mean, it's probably less than 3%, which is abysmal, considering
Mhm.
that women bring in so much empathy, their ability to manage crisis, their communication skills is, I would say, put it at phenomenally, at a very high scale, and their ability to, diffuse a crisis, negotiate. These are those
Yes.
skills that women bring in very easily and interestingly. So I would say that that has never been a showstopper for me. But having said that, yes,
Mhm.
I wish there were more women on the C-suite. And my advice to people who look to do this is, stay on course. Make sure that you are doing the right things in terms of upskilling yourself, in terms of getting a more strategic mindset, and also engaging yourselves with leaders in your own organizations. And pretty soon, I think you will find the way that takes you out there.
That's great, ma'am. Ma'am, women also bring a very soft and emotional feeling to the job as well. They actually increase the particular value of that particular title that has been given to them. For example, if someone is a recruiter, they will say talent hunter, talent acquisitions, and multiple other things. When you look at the paper, it is different. So that natural branding, is it very natural to women to what they say in Hindi, bada chada ke bolna. So that also helps in marketing.
No, I'm. It's very interesting. Nobody's asked me that question. I think women undersell themselves. Very honestly, I feel that when, it's proven that when there is a job opportunity, if a man rates himself 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, he will go ahead and say, I'm good for this job. But for a woman, even if she's 6 or 7, she'll say, no, maybe I need to be 10 on 10 to get onto this job. So I think that's a fundamental difference, the way I look at how men and women approach jobs or opportunities very differently. So to your question about whether we bring in different skill sets, yes, we do. I don't see them as either or situations. I just see men and women just fulfilling different parts of a problem, and probably men are better at doing something and women are better at doing it something. So it's really a composite mix that makes a lot of difference. Yeah.
As a leader, especially as a female leader, because this is not something on the questionnaire that we had shared with you, but this is something that is coming from a lot of my female colleagues who told me to ask you because they are really looking up to you. As a female leader, how difficult is to lead a team of male?
Like I said, I think men and women, without doubt, respect intelligence, they respect integrity, they respect what you bring to the table. More so millennials, because honestly, I work with a lot of millennials and they don't care squat about, you could be CMO, you could be CEO. They don't care about titles. They care about what is it that you bring to the conversation. Are you adding value to the conversation? So they don't care titles, they don't care authority, they don't care for a lot of things. So I think that's really the fundamental difference. What do you bring to the table as a leader? So to my mind, what's helped me best is to be authentic. I'm a leader, but that doesn't mean that I can solve all the problems, that I have solutions for everything. I rely on my team because my team brings in different skill sets, and that's something that I respect. So some of these things I think have been very critical for me to look at, when we solve team crisis, etc. But whatever said and done, I think if you're objective, if you're fact-based, then you win the argument. You don't have to deal whether it's being a man or a woman. I think these are some of the basic things that help you win in any situation that you deal out there.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for clarifying this one. I was just telling the same to someone. We all are equal, but then some certain people want to drag it in a different way. So hearing from you actually puts a full stop. There is no comparison. We all have different sets of skills. So, ma'am, as a CMO, what's a day like in the office?
I would say on a very every day is different. On a very ordinary day, it's chaotic to say the least, because you get different things thrown at you. Now with COVID, everything is so dynamic. Everything is so, you have to be very quick on the uptake to start and resolve or diffuse a crisis or diffuse a problem. Sales, working very closely with sales because everybody's got pressures, companies are not hitting their numbers for obvious reasons. So there's a lot of things that happen in a day. It's chaotic. So I would say it's interesting as well. On a very lucky day, I would say that it's probably quieter. And when it is quieter, then, you get a good opportunity to read up on stuff, read up reports, and bring yourself abreast to knowledge. But otherwise, I would say it's pretty interesting and chaotic both at the same time.
So working with the sales team is basically, are they guiding you or you are guiding them? How is it like? Because I'm working with, I've been both.
Yeah, I know that. And I think I respect, I have deepest respect for sales professionals, because you're hitting your numbers day on day, week on week, quarter on quarter is not got to be easy. But having said that, they get a better sense of the market because they're right there on the field and they're right there with their customers. So their value that they bring and their opinions are highly, highly respected by me and by any marketing person. Having said that, I think marketing has a dual responsibility. It's not just about delivering, or fueling the sales pipeline. That's an important part of it. But I think marketers and brand people also have a very critical role of creating a brand. And that goes way beyond creating a sales pipeline. It requires you to think about the brand differently. Make your brand relevant for not only customers now, but for customers that will potentially be your customers 7 to 10 years, from now. It also requires you to be digitally dexterous, which means that can I make my brand very digitally smart? Can I give it a digital spin, but be real about it? I mean, let's not forget that the brand is as good as the promise. So if you don't deliver on your promise, then you can say all the great things about the brand, it doesn't work. So I would say CMOs and marketers particularly have this dual responsibility of not only looking at sales funnel, which is an important measure of marketing's roles and responsibility in the key KRAs, but also a very, very significant part of their brand time or marketing time needs to be spent in really making sure that the brand continues to stay relevant, not only for now, but for the future.
Okay. If somebody wants to become a CMO, let's say from a senior marketing manager or a director of marketing, or let's say general manager marketing, what are the qualities they need to go? My question is very simple. For an aspiring marketer, what does it take to become a CMO?
I think first of all, you should have a complete knowledge, if not the ability, in what are the various aspects of marketing. Fundamentally, you should have domain intelligence and domain understanding. That's very critical. The second is your ability to think strategically, which I think is far, far more critical. So I'll give you an example. One of my previous roles was head of marketing, and then I moved to a much smaller company about 8 years ago as a CMO. So there was no difference other than the title. So one said head of marketing of a particular company, and the other one said CMO. And the opportunity as a CMO was that I got a seat at the exec table. And I started engaging with my leaders as if I was head of marketing. So I was continuing to champion the cause of marketing. But I soon realized that when you become the CMO or you acquire the C-suite, then what you bring to the table has to be way beyond marketing. Your ability to understand business, your ability to understand finance, your ability to understand what are the levers that will drive growth. And that's got far-reaching impact than just looking at a head of marketing and say, hey, you know what, I did, I got these fabulous mentions in these reports. I delivered 10 million or 50 million to the pipeline. I got all these mentions in these cool reports and things like that. It's way beyond that. And I think that's where thinking strategically becomes a strategic value differentiator in the conversations that aspiring marketers who want to be CMOs, should take. The third is ability to engage intelligently with your peers, because realize that your peers are going to be CHROs, CFOs, CEOs, CDOs, CSOs. And therefore, if you don't bring in that perspective of a peer-to-peer engagement, then again, some of the essence of being a CMO or a C-suite is a bit lost. And then lastly, I would say is your ability to think ahead. And be able to be like a beacon for the company, which means that I'm not just delivering here and now stuff, but I have the ability to look at where this company is headed, or have an intelligent understanding of where this company is headed, and can I bring some of those opinions to the table backed by facts. So some of those would be, I would say, how you can look to differentiate yourself from the other conversations, and moving from, say, a senior manager or director level to a head of marketing. And then a CMO, which is, I would say, which needs a slightly different skill sets when you move to a CMO or a C-suite. Does that answer your question?
Basically, yeah. So one more question that comes out from this answer is, basically, not everybody can become a CMO. And if you become a CMO, you need to have certain qualities. Now, as you said, apart from your marketing skills and numbers, you have to bring in something else as well. Now, those something could be, for our general audience to understand, is mostly going to be the ownership of, delivering the company, not in just terms of number, branding, but it should have a far-reaching impact even when you're not there, right? It's like you are running the company, so you understand more about marketing, finance, budgeting, human resources, deployment. It has a far-reaching impact, because your peers hope that you know everything about them as they know about you, because they have studied everything, and you guys come together to find the best possible strategy to move ahead. Is that right?
Kind of, yes. You may not know all the answers, but you're definitely thinking ahead for the company. You're definitely thinking strategically. Your ability to build great teams, your ability to inspire, those I would say would be, definitely good to have traits for leaders as they look to move ahead, because you definitely need to inspire a team. You definitely need, you're bringing in different skill sets. You have this unique ability to program manage, huge initiatives, because when you go to when you reach a certain, I wouldn't want to say CMO, but when you reach the C-suite, you are, your responsibility not only is with marketing, but you are also called to lead a lot of organization initiatives. And at that point in time, like I said, your ability to inspire, your ability to motivate different teams who may or may not have a reporting relationship with you becomes very critical. So those, I would also say, you need to work on those skills, spread your network, engage with different teams within the organization, build a perception of equity or an equity itself that helps you move the needle on, your next role and the roles after.
Okay, that's great to know, ma'am. So one more career advice that you would like to take from you is, You moved off from a head of marketing from a mid-sized large firm to a small firm to take a title of CMO. Was it a strategic move that was decided by you so that you can take a CMO's role, or you could have continued a little more in that firm and then probably aim for a CMO position at a larger firm? What was it like?
So I still don't have answers to the question, but I'll tell you what I learned from this. So the last day that I was leaving, and I was leaving a very big IT services firm as their head of marketing,
Yes.
a very large IT services firm.
I know.
Joining this relatively unknown firm. And then the last day, my HR head of that firm said, Purnima, it's not yet 5 p.m. You've still not logged out. If you want to take back your resignation, I'll be more than happy to take it and give you back your head of marketing role. And I cannot tell you how tempting that offer was, because I did not honestly know what was I going to do in this new firm, which nobody had heard of. And it was a much smaller firm. And I really did not know whether I was taking the right decision. But in hindsight, and I was actually thinking about it a few days back, had I continued with my role in the same organization, sure, maybe I had opportunities to move up. Maybe I would have had expanded my network. Maybe I would have gained some more international experience, because there's a lot of movement to international locations and so on. But what I learned as being the CMO across the last two and now the third stint, essentially the challenge of being a good leader, an authentic leader, the learnings have been immense, and the unlearnings have been even more immense. So I had to change a lot of my style of how I continue to deliver. And it was not about just, keeping your eyes on the marketing metrics. It was having a strategic perspective, diffuse or, negotiate a crisis. Sometimes even get into situations where one of the companies that I was working for was also wanting to acquire another company. And these are large conversations that perhaps I may not have got as being head of marketing in the larger firm, because there you'll have much larger teams, and, acquisitions and mergers would always be taken care of by the mergers and acquisitions team. So some of these opportunities are incredible, and that's because you take that risk. So there was one advice that I want to share with everybody. When I was going through the same dilemma, I'd asked one of my very close acquaintances, what did he think? And he told me, Purnima, your measure of yardstick should be very simple. If your knowledge curve and your value curve, one of the curve has to increase. So in this case, for me, my knowledge curve would have definitely increased by joining the CMO of the small firm, and my value curve would have also increased because, when you look at being a CMO, then your commercial quotient also increases by a bit. So I would say that in hindsight, has been a very interesting decision, and one that I don't regret at all.
Now, how do you balance your life professionally and personally? Being a CMO, there are a lot of things at the table. Now, not only looking towards your own team, but a company as a whole. Current organization that you're leading is a big organization as well. So how are you balancing those things out? How are you maintaining, how are you striking a correct balance in that?
I think when you move into any new organization or into any new role, the first, I would say almost 8 to 12 months is always going to be a challenge, because you have to understand the DNA of the organization. You have to align your team and yourself. Sometimes the work styles might be different. Sometimes the approaches might be different. So the first few months are always going to be tough. Having said that, the way that I've always looked at my roles is, first of all, you need to operationalize the team, which means that you need to bring in a great team. Or work with the existing team and make sure that their skills are aligned to the objectives of the organization. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a rejig. You have honest conversations with your team and figure out that, maybe the role that they were given right now was not exactly what they like to do. They'd like to do something else. So you always give an opportunity to mix and match, because at the end of the day, your team needs to be operationalized at the very least. The next phase is all about optimization. And typically for marketers, optimization is all about, bringing in best-in-class technology, making sure that, your vendor and partner ecosystems are well aligned, making sure that you're working closely with the sales and, you're building your ecosystem of cohorts, or you're building your ecosystem of people who are working with you to deliver on company and so on. The second phase is always going to be so the first and second phases are always, I would say, they work hand in hand. It's a little challenging, but once you get into the rhythm of the organization, you understand what you want, and you have your KRAs fairly well done, then I think I wouldn't say it gets easier, but it becomes a little bit more predictable. Having said that, I do believe as an individual, not just as a CMO or somebody who's heading marketing, I think your health and your personal fitness and your ability to, because you need to be fit to lead. And when I say fit, I mean not only physical fitness, because I blog a lot on fitness, that's why I couldn't resist reading this. It's also about how mentally agile and how you keep yourself abreast of new things. So I would say keeping yourself fit is number one criteria and priority. Your family is also number one priority. So never let anything anything get in the way of that, because I think that is what builds a foundation for you to have a great career. So that's always my advice for people who want to say, oh, how do I balance career? And if something is, there's a motto which says, if it is meant to be, it is up to me. So your health is in your hands, your family's, care and concern is in your hands. So nothing should move away from there. Having said that, yes, it's a balancing act for everybody, not just for me, but for, every person in the organization, especially in these times when they're trying to balance family and, work from home and at the same time get things done. Yeah, it's tough. But never let go of your health, never let go of family would be my first piece of advice, or I would say something that I live by. And that has always seen me in good times, because if you're mentally and physically fit, the rest of the stuff becomes very easy to tackle. It's a no-brainer.
We can handle it if we are fit. I also believe in that. Yeah. So ma'am, what has been the thought process during this COVID-19? What changes did you make as a CMO, or what changes did the market challenges did the market throw at you as a CMO that you have aligned yourself or you had overcome this one? So there are many words to this question, but I just summing it up in this one single sentence, because some are asking, what are the challenges you face? Some are asking, what are the solutions to it? Some are asking that, how did you cope up with it? So how are you doing during this COVID-19 times?
I would say, I'll try and give the long and short of it. I think when it first hit us, we said, oh, this is just a global phenomenon. Nothing's going to happen to us. And, things like that. So it was probably avoidance of the whole issue, and we went on with our lives. The real issue struck us when probably our workplaces got shut and for indefinite periods. And that's when we realized, oh, this is here to stay for some time. So what do we do? So initially there was a panic, and we said, okay, now, how do we support sales? How do we, do all of these initiatives? Because now everything is going online. We had to recast our budgets because there were no more events happening, and we had to, move some of the stuff online and so on and so forth. So there was this initial panic of, oh, what do we do? I would say that we all I think for most of us, we realize that this is not a time to overdo things. I think for any marketer, this is the time to be with the sales, to be with the clients, to say, hey, we don't want to push you anything. We don't want to sell anything. We just want to make sure you guys are safe. We just want to make sure that your families are safe. And I think that brought in a whole new conversation, where now you're having conversations with sales guys, and you see their kids, or their pets going all over the place, and, so the family, home, work environment, all is that's kind of blurred. And no one's complaining, because at the end of the day, this is a pandemic that nobody ever saw. And this is of unforeseen proportion. What we did, so there's no solution. There's no right or wrong solution. I think to each their own. But what we did was we worked very closely with the sales. I think the first one was the sales and making sure that our employees are safe. I think that was probably the most important criteria. And therefore, one channel which became very important was communication and online communication, whether it's video or or emails and things like that. So we definitely would have used a lot of collaboration tools. We would have used a lot of audio video equipment, communication and so on, to just communicate. I think that's number one. Number two, yes, I think like all organizations, everybody's recasting their numbers. Everybody's relooking at where the next sell will come, or where the next business will come. Because let's face it, I think businesses are getting delayed. Things are, people are taking time to take commercial decisions and so on. So the role of marketing has been more of being a support for the sales engine. At the same time, at the brand level, we've constantly looked to communicate that we continue to be digital, we continue to be relevant to customers, and we've brought in some new solutions. Like, for example, for us in the place that I work, we brought in a workspace as a service, which meant that your home and work spaces have gotten interchanged. And so how do you manage that, especially from a business or an IT perspective? Because now people are at home, they're downloading all kinds of things, they're using their personal equipment, official equipment, they're going through their home network. So there's a whole bunch of things that happen. So I think that's this has been unprecedented. I don't think anyone ever prepared. So a lot of the playbooks are changing. A lot of the channels through which you're communicating is changing. A lot of recasting on the budget is happening. But having said that, the brand promise doesn't change. Your goals and KRAs might have got deferred, but they certainly continue to be, we certainly continue to be mapped on the same goals and KRAs. But I think the business has been a little bit more empathetic to the fact that business is never going to be the same, at least for the now and the near future. So those dimensions have been appropriately mapped by all of us, and including my peers in the marketing and other industries. Yeah.
Yeah, this may not be the wisest question to ask, but then since you have seen the most digital era and post-digital era, and I haven't asked this to any of the marketers in the last 17 interviews I have done to you. What is the difference between a marketing strategy and a digital marketing strategy? As I said, it may not be the best questions, but then this is something that you need an answer for.
So you have to realize that digital as a concept came probably the last 10, 12, 15 years ago, with the advent of technology and with the advent of networks opening up and so on. Marketing existed before that as well. The I would say holy grail of creating a brand that is sustainable exists then and exists now. So the way I look at digital is it's a subset of your marketing. So if your marketing strategy at the higher level encompasses how you relate to your employees, to your business, to your stakeholders, digital is a way to enhance that ecosystem or enhance engagement with that ecosystem. And therefore, it always, in my mind, will continue to be a subset of the overall marketing strategy. Having said that, what is changing is because technology is moving at such a high speed, the levers for which you can understand, the levers to use technology, and in this case, digital marketing, to understand your customer and your prospect has become that much more sharper. And therefore, this requires a different skill set to manage. So I will claim that I'm not a digital marketing expert by any yardstick. I can at best be a guide to say, this is what I want to continue to do. But at the same time, I will rely very extensively on my digital marketing experts because they bring in a completely different set of understanding of how these tools engage. So the way I look at it is that this is a subset. Having said that, it requires absolutely niche skills to understand digital marketing as it is today, because your customer is connecting with you through digital. And therefore, anyone who can decode digital and digital marketing probably gets all the brownie points there is. So I would look at it more from that perspective, as opposed to them being two parallel streams of strategy.
Okay, that's great. Ma'am, at your position, there are leaders, I would not say below you, but with you working in the same team, marketing manager, senior marketing manager, content head, and multiple. At their own level, they are also brilliant people. To lead a team of brilliant people like this and experienced people, how easy or how difficult, how challenging is it? What are the things that is it required to lead such a strong team?
I think first is I would strongly urge people to build an emotional quotient, or EQ, as they say, because you could be brilliant, you could be technically the ace at what you do. But if you're emotionally challenged to understand how teams behave and team structures, then that becomes a little bit of a challenge for all leaders at all times. So I think it's important to have a high degree of emotional quotient, read empathy, read the ability to understand tacit signals, to understand what people are really saying but not saying, from their words. So it's important to understand that. The second is, your ability to constantly encourage the team becomes very critical. So you throw challenging tasks, make sure that their goals are stretched, but at the same time, give them kudos for what they've done and what they've delivered. So that helps you to be able to measure them really well and have fair conversations at such times like this, because I'm swamped with appraisals and you know how these conversations can be. So it's important for the teams to have a very measurable KRA, because beyond otherwise, we can go all over the place. The third is to give them really, like I said, challenging goals, because if you're not challenged in your job, then you're not learning anything. The fourth is try and mix and match the team, upskill or cross-skill them a little better, because at the end of the day, if you want to be a CMO or head of marketing, you've got to understand how these functions interplay with each other. And it's not just enough that you become an AR expert or a PR expert and you can be head of marketing. You have to understand how these levers function together, how do they impact the overall brand of the company, and so on. So I would say these would be a few things to keep in mind when you're leading teams.
Okay, that's a great answer, ma'am. Now, see, there are certain times, where it's difficult to handle these people. The reason being, they are excellent creatively, right? You must have already gone through this, and I have seen a lot of people, leaders faltering at it. It's not their mistake. It's just like too much to handle. Sometimes you cannot go in certain direction. Sometimes you have to use a carrot and stick method, and most of the time it work as stick because you have to show them, boss, I am the boss. Let me go like this. So how do you handle? It's such a tricky situation because see, it can make or break our team, because sometimes people just in emotion throw the people say, I'm leaving and this, that. How do you handle that? That's something that leaders like us who are coming up the ladder would like to understand from you, how to handle those situations.
So one, I would firmly say that I always, I'd like to think, and maybe you should check with my team for that, that I give them room for failure. So that's one cushion that they have to say, okay, I might think of an idea which is really bizarre, but my manager supports me and, looks at that, doesn't look at that as making or breaking my move to the next level. The second, having said that, I always give them a mirror to say, anything that we do needs to have an outcome. And therefore, if they're able to articulate a sliver of an outcome that they can deliver, I think that can still pass the muster. But if you don't have an outcome, then I'd say, why would you even want to do something like this? It might fuel your creative need and the need to create something beautiful. But at the end of the day, all activities and all transactions and all initiatives, if in that order, need to have some outcome of the other. Okay. So I think it's very important to have that conversation, and they get it. Most people get it. Of course, when I was with the advertising agencies, the degree of creativity is much higher. But now I think things have changed a lot. Everybody in the corporate world is measured on KRAs, and therefore outcome is a conversation that one needs to have. But like you said, at least in marketing, we have the ability to mix creativity and technology. And I guess we are lucky. You and I are lucky because we get to do it. Not many functions we get to do that.
I'm lucky I followed you. I followed people like Ma'am, one more critical question here is, let's say, for example, if somebody wants to be a part of your team, right? Assuming that you are hiring, what are the great qualities that one should have to be a part of your team? It's just not because you are here, I'm asking, because I've asked this question to multiple entities as well. It's like, what does it take to be a part of your team?
I think I would always look for cultural fitment, because it's not about while it is about the qualities that you bring in, I think every company is different. And therefore, I need to look at people who follow or at least align themselves to the culture of that company. And, it's fortunately or unfortunately, I've always viewed people by that yardstick, because when you come into the company or a new company, the culture and your alignment is of utmost importance. And you may not realize it now, but once you get into the company, you realize how, and many times you realize in the first few months, oh, this is not what I wanted. And also, I always try and avoid situations like that. So I think that's the number one criteria for me. The second criteria is how authentic you are. And that's pretty obvious from, face-to-face conversations. And I don't care what's written on the CV. You can write a lot of stuff on the CV. But I think we are seasoned enough to understand what you really deliver and how authentic you are. And I think I look for authenticity and, your, certain traits like commitment and what you've done to deliver and things like that. And that usually, if a person is honest, it just comes to the fore. So I would say honesty and authenticity would be the number two. And number three would be definitely skill sets, what you bring. Because like I said, marketing is changing so rapidly that, you do need people with niche skills. And that's something which I don't have. So I always look for people who bring in new skill sets. So I would say these three things.
That's great, ma'am. Ma'am, are you hiring during this pandemic in your team?
Yes, in fact, I just recently onboarded my vice president of communications and branding. And yes, I am looking to hire. At the same time, see, like I said, marketing is becoming so specialized, it's very difficult to get one person who knows it all. And therefore, we have to invest. Know that this year is anyways what it is, but at least we should ready ourselves for 2021 and beyond, and hoping that the pandemic would hopefully reduce by then. It's important to bring in the right people and people with next gen digital technologies and digital understanding of how technologies will evolve. So yes, to answer your question shortly, yes, I'm always on the lookout for people who bring in niche skills.
What kind of hirings are you doing? Content, social media?
Mostly in, like I said, I've got the person who's heading branding and communications, because this is the most critical function for me as far as I'm concerned in a COVID world. You need to figure out how the brand can stay relevant, and you also need to figure out how do we communicate effectively. Second, I would say is I'm definitely looking at somebody who can add value to our sales pipeline. Somebody who understands how different technologies, how can we map customer journeys, how do we map the customer life cycle, how do we make interventions. So essentially a person who understands technology and the ability to leverage campaigns to deliver. So I would be looking at folks who bring some of those skill sets. Yeah.
Okay. So now during this pandemic, has ABM taken over account-based marketing? Because it looks more relevant to me right now. I've been employing for the last 1.5 years, has given us fantastic results now. We have set a certain way of revenue coming in because I was very clear. If I get a chance as a marketing head, the first thing I'll do is I'll set it up as an account-based marketing and something called as TIBM, which I coined myself. And that's how I was able to commission network as well, which is targeted industry-based marketing. So basically what you do is you make a clientele from one particular industry and you just serve them. And over a period of time, you grow in that particular industry by showing those clientele the work that you do. It becomes very easy. If I come from an IT company and I come to you, this is what we have done, this is what it is. We understand everything, what is your thing, and we can serve you. So it becomes very easy to acquire new clients because they know we are specializing in this one as well. Is this something that has taken very, relevancy nowadays, the ABM activities?
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I wouldn't say it is something that is an afterthought. I would say that the focus on this has become reinforced. Most organizations are realizing, and my organization is no different, saying that, we do have a base that we need to protect, and we do have a base that we need to continue to grow. And therefore, this becomes very critical in that light. And just recently, in fact, my sales team and I, we've actually just finished an exercise where we've looked at some of our key accounts and what we can do. Having said that, this is not something like you would know, Sachin. It's not something that's going to yield results in 3 to 6 months. It's going to take time. But I think it's important to start thinking. And those of you who haven't started, I would highly recommend that you can work very closely with the sales and delivery teams to ensure that you have an idea of which of these accounts are going to yield results, and therefore pitch in the marketing efforts to make sure that you're driving more actionable insights, and therefore in that process driving more revenues for the company. And that's something which can be proudly part of, especially when you do your KRAs and appraisal discussions.
Yeah, because you see, it's for a young marketer like me, or a person who's aspiring to be a marketer, it's a different high, because I make a list of clients and I say, I'm going to take you. I'm going to bring you. So it's a different high because you're working constantly towards it. So it's a kind of a sense of achievement, though you may not be financially rewarded or awarded by the company for the work you're doing, because sometimes the deals maybe it is at a lower end. But then, if you look at it over a period of time, it's going to grow. It's going to grow a lot. And this is the kind of brand that you need to showcase on your website, on your presentations, on multiple things as well. This I'm telling you from an experience because I did a free project back in 2008 for a very large financial firm. It starts with 2 words. I don't want to name it. It's one of the largest. They give ratings to all over the countries as well. I did nothing. I just gave them and I said, I'll do it for free. So she was very happy about it. But she didn't know at the back end, I took her logo, I put it on my website, I put it on my presentation, and I ran through all the industry over there. And I got 7 to 8 clients within 3 months just because of that single name. And I took a promise from her. If somebody asks for a testimonial or something and drops an email, just say that you have worked with me. And that's how it works. So these are the small tricks that we marketers do as well, right? To be successful, to bring it. This is something that we can't explain it to management, not to the sales guy, why you're doing it for free. It's something that we need to do to leverage our brand, to get some good words about ourselves as well. So that being said, if somebody wants to, really grow their brand, what do they need to do?
Oh, I wish that's like a $10 million question you asked me. Growing the brand can have many different dimensions. I think the first of all, you have to realize that growing the brand is not just a marketing piece alone. The brand is the company, and therefore you need to understand that this is an all-encompassing initiative. And if you are looking at growing the brand, then first of all, identify what does the brand want to be. So your vision, mission statements, your brand's value proposition, all of that needs to be clearly articulated. So I'm assuming that whoever's starting on this process will get that buy-in, because your buy-in from your stakeholders, your leadership is extremely critical. Having put that in place, then the next step is to look at how do you amplify the brand. So when you say grow the brand, I would assume amplification of the brand and making sure that people who buy your brand or consume your brand or interact with your brand understand what this brand is all about. So it's very important to then start spending and looking at things like digital marketing, as you said, or digital, being available digital, because now everything is digital and you cannot afford to be not on a digital platform if you want your brand to be seen. So leveraging various social media and other amplification channels to leverage your brand. And also to be seen in the right communities or right circles. If you're an IT brand, then obviously it's a no-brainer. If you're a manufacturing brand, then you need to be seen at at the relevant forums for you to amplify the brand. The third is something which we often forget is to use your own employees as social media amplifiers of the brand. I have a very simple equation. Any company may have 5,000 employees, and you can be sure all of them are on Facebook, all of them are on LinkedIn, and maybe some of them are on Twitter. And those 5,000 people will have 500 connections in their LinkedIn. Even if we use just those 5,000 people to amplify the brand, just look at the reach that you can get with no money. So I think it's also about being intelligent as to how you want to leverage the brand and looking at your ecosystem and connecting with the ecosystem to ensure that they leverage the brand and they talk about the brand. They feel proud of the brand. They associate themselves. So it's not a single exercise. It's a journey that needs to be constantly thinking through. And then you also need to be very clear that the brand may change over a period of time. And you have to be intelligent enough to understand the point where the brand can change. And what does that mean, therefore, for you to relook at the brand positioning, for you to relook at how the brand can continue to stay relevant. So I would say it's an ongoing journey. Of course, you can measure it by your, obviously at a highest level, you will measure it by the equity that the brand demands through whatever channels you want to use. But a very simple measure is definitely the growth in your customers, number of customers or customers who engage with you, the number of new conversations that you're having, and the number of people who put in their resume to join your company. I think this would be the simple yardstick to understand how you're growing the brand.
That's great, sir. I'm coming to the last part of the interview. Few of the most critical questions that people are asking now is, what should company do in terms of saving their brands during COVID-19? A lot of the companies are getting closed. A lot of people are out of job. People are also resigning from jobs because their salaries have been cut, so they are no longer finding it viable to work, go to office, afford these things as well, which we understand companies are ever not doing well as well. So how do people improve, or at least, maintain the same level of, revenues or same level of sales or same level of growth during this pandemic? What does the marketing team can do during this time?
So, like you rightly said, unfortunately, a few industries that have borne the brunt of COVID have obviously been retail, hospitality, and travel and leisure. And, one can't but empathize with people who have lost their jobs. And yes, I mean, that's a real phenomenon. There's not much you can do at this point in time. But having said that, I always think that if these companies had adopted digital, maybe optimize their processes, become more lean in the process, then perhaps their need to let go of people and quickly reserve cash and conserve cash by letting people go or not doing certain things probably would have been reduced. In my view, I think what companies need to do is very quickly adopt a digital way of operations, because I think that cocoons them from a lot of the outcomes of issues like the pandemic, and a lot of companies were unprepared for it, for rightly so. So what has happened? In fact, I think the Microsoft CEO actually said that 2 years of digital, I would say digital consumption or digital technology has now been consumed in 2 months. It just shows you the scale with which people are adopting digital. And I think it's high time, even from a marketing standpoint, use this opportunity to really automate your processes. You really look to understand what tools you can use to make your marketing initiatives more intelligent, for you to get a better understanding of the customers, because that's what's going to help you stay more relevant, because then you stop doing mundane transactional jobs, but you actually use the tools and technology to deliver you insights, which you can then take back to the C-levels and say, this is what I'm finding. And then you can drive a lot more intelligent conversations with the C-suite. So in a nutshell, I mean, that's the long and short of it. There's no, like I said, I don't have a magic wand. I wish we all did, and we could wish this corona go away, but we don't. So just to make the best use, I think leverage technology. Be more empathetic to your teams. People will lose jobs, but let's show some empathy to people, who are probably struggling, and see if there's some way you can help them. And at least that's a humane side that I would look at. The amount of resumes I've got in my LinkedIn inbox is huge, and one can't help. But what you can do is just push it to teams and ask them if you can help, because that's the best or the least you can do, I would say, in such situations.
Yes.
But yeah. That's what it is.
What is the amount of emails do you get from agencies who are looking to provide their digital marketing expertise to you
Oh,
every day?
it's increased tenfold, yeah, Sachin. So I just don't know. I'm overwhelmed, and but they're all pitching I would say they're all pitching things that you need, like customer intelligence. They're pitching how do we get faster returns from ABM. So they're all pitching the right things. It's just that the activity levels have increased a lot.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, before we close this interview, couple of questions that, any message to students who have just passed out, and people who are looking to become a marketer, people who have lost jobs, especially in the field of marketing. Any particular message to them? Because that's something will really boost their morale.
Yeah. We all understand. We all agree it's tough times. And this is not of anybody's doing, but it's just happened. And it happened to be in a year when some of you were graduating, or, unfortunately, some of you had to lose jobs. I would use this time to upskill myself. Especially if you're looking for marketing roles, you've got to be, really good at something that others aren't. This is a good time and there are a lot of these free courses that you can look at. We don't have to pay too much money, and you don't have to worry about too much of, expenses going on. And you can really, pick some really good skills, and those will hold you in good stead. Having said that, I don't think that the hiring has gone into complete freeze. I think people are hiring. Exactly. So it's not as if it's a very desperate situation where, but like I said, if you have skill sets that differentiate you better from your peers, then your chances of getting that role and opportunity is much higher. So don't lose hope, keep upskilling yourself, be creative about how you write your resumes, and all the best to you guys.
Yeah. Ma'am, one of the last questions is, what do you think about digital marketing? Where is the future? Or somebody can just become a marketing manager and then adopt the skills, or people are okay, they can directly start with digital marketing. The reason being, a lot of fake institutes have come up online. They're telling that they're going to go for 5,555,999. You can finish a digital marketing course. God knows, I'm still learning from 7 years. And then, we all are learning. So what do you think about digital marketing future?
If I told you that, Sachin, I will teach you how to launch a rocket to Mars in 3 months, would you believe me or would you not believe me?
With you, I will believe it, but technically, I won't trust you.
Exactly. You won't believe me because it's practically impossible. And it's ridiculous for people to say that you can learn to be a digital marketer in 6 months, 12 months. Just doesn't work that way, because like I said, digital marketing is a very, very vast space. What you can do, however, is be a niche within the niche, because digital marketing it's not going to go away. It's going to get bigger and better. There is no doubt about it and with COVID and, so much happening around the world, the consumption of online and content
We will continue from there, your future about digital marketing, what is the future about? And I also got a question from one of the next interview I'm going to be interviewing. So the lady asks, what's your view on people who want to change their career in this midlife or mid path from being a marketer to a digital marketing, considering stigma around it? Midlife career change. She's a lady.
Yeah, I would say, lady, there is no stigma attached to learning new skills. And I think in today's world, a lot has changed, considering how we were 20 years ago or 15 years ago. When I started my career, actually more than 20 years ago, it's almost 25 years, the life was very different. If I had a break in my career, it's viewed, as something which is not good. But today, I think marketers and people who are hiring in general understand that these are all part of life. So there is no stigma attached to taking a break, number one. In fact, there is absolutely no stigma attached to you moving from marketing or, whatever you're doing to do digital marketing, because that, to me, as a person who will hire, it shows me aptitude. It shows me the ability to take risk. And that's something I deeply value in people. Because if you don't take risks, I've taken a few myself. I I wouldn't say all of them have worked well, but it just shows me that you have the confidence in you to take up a new role and be good at it. So I would say, question or ask yourself, why do you want to do it? Are you doing this digital marketing course because you think it will give you more stability in your next roles, or it will give you more money, or are you doing it because you're genuinely interested in digital marketing? There's a huge difference. If you're not interested in digital marketing and tools and technologies are not your thing, then please don't do it, because it's just going to not give you to as many benefits as you would like. But if you're somebody who's savvy about technology, who unlike me, I shouldn't say it, but there's just so much to take in. Sometimes you're not up with it for a lot of stuff. So
Yes.
my advice would be go for it if you really think technology is your thing. Go ahead and have fun, and there's no stigma attached at all.
That's great to know, ma'am. Ma'am, before we close the interview, let me thank you for coming on this show.
My pleasure,
Network
Sachin.
just Network just started, and it's been just 17 shoots that have completed now. I was really looking forward to your interview, and along with few of the award-winning marketers that I've interviewed, this has been one of the great experience. People are going to learn from this, especially I think so. Most of my female colleagues who had answers, who are working in HR or in software engineering field, I really wanted them to look forward to this interview, and hopefully few of them have come as well. Once this video is out on YouTube as well, they're also going to learn more from you in terms of how to build a career. Because I have seen the growth chart on your LinkedIn page. I think that was more to dig when we were before starting this interview. More to find out about this one. I think that's going to play more vital role in terms of planning, especially balancing the life, especially going about it, especially leadership as well. So that's something a lot of people are going to learn. Despite the gender, they're going to learn a lot about it, how to maintain a fine balance and go ahead about it. So with that said, thank you for joining at Network. It was a pleasure talking to you, man.
Thank you so much, Sachin, and all the best in your endeavors. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. So here I was talking to Ms. Purnima Menon. She's a CMO at Marlabs. Marlabs is a well-known IT company. It has locations in Bangalore and many different countries as well. Leadership. I often say leader is an important thing in a company. If you don't have a leader, you don't have a future. I have seen her in a various different companies at various different roles, and I had connected over a long period of time, trying to understand a lot of things when I was growing up as a marketer as well. It did help me a lot. A lot of the articles that she publishes on her own on her LinkedIn page, LinkedIn post, that's something worth reading as well. It will give you a great idea about who she is and what does she think about a lot of the things. The whole point of the interview today was to introduce a leader from marketing field who happens to be a female and how she's leading in this industry. She's doing a phenomenal job. I keep hearing her name in a lot of the conversations that I had with other marketers as well. And that's something that as a person or as a professional in any field that we should always aspire to become, that people should always remember our name for the work that we have done. It will definitely boost your own morale. Plus, you also know that you're going at the right path. With that said, thank you for joining at Network today. Keep watching this space. Our team at Network is working hard to have these interviews done in a print format as well, which we will be launching very soon on our website, www.thenettalk.com. And we would be bringing in more stories like this. Thank you.